Hi everyone, welcome. This is Mrs. Ragnow again, and this is the crazy case for the first lesson today. This goes along with the history of forensics because this is one of my favorite cases that has changed the history of forensic science and the law as we know it. So this is a very underrated case. A lot of people don't know this one. So today we are going to be discussing the crazy case of John Webster versus the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That is the trial that took place. And this is a part of Introduction to Forensic Science, a case that changed history. So this all starts, we're going to start off in 1849 at Harvard Medical School. This is a picture of the building where we are kind of setting the stage. So just picture Boston, picture a city, but 1850s. So Dr. George Parkman is such a wealthy, prominent figure. He's actually so elite that he had enough land to actually donate a few years earlier. So prior to 1849, he actually donated the land that the Harvard Medical School actually built the school for practicing medicine, and he is now a physician there in 1849. So Dr. George Parkman, very wealthy, prominent figure. He's friends with James Audubon of the Audubon Society. He's in the elite social class, right? So he is a professor at Harvard Medical School, and basically what happens, the story is that the afternoon of November, around Thanksgiving break, 1849, he is seen walking into this building, and he's never seen again. So his family sends out notice. Of course, they would like to pay money for any information they can gather. The only information they could gather was that the last place he was seen was going to visit his friend, Dr. Webster. So this has turned into what we now know as the Webster murder case. And this is a vital case for a lot of reasons. But basically we know that on Friday afternoon, on November 23rd, 1849, Dr. Parkman goes to visit Dr. John Webster, who's also a professor in the building there at the Harvard Medical. And so he goes to visit him. It is said that the purpose of the visit was that Dr. John Webster had owed Dr. Parkman some loans. So maybe Dr. Parkman was going to collect some money, but he was never seen again. The reason this is vital is because at this point in history, there's a disappearance. Now, no one can say for sure what had happened. There was a lot of speculation. The last place he was seen was Dr. Webster, but no body is found. And because there is no body, at this point in history, the law states that you must prove to an absolute certainty. So the law states that if you are going to convict someone of a crime, say a murder, then you need to have a body that can be identified. And you must prove to an absolute certainty that the body is, in fact, the person that we are saying potentially was murdered. So at this point, it's a disappearance. It's not a murder. We have no body. So this is a very strange twist of fate, which is basically that there is no body that is found of Dr. Parkman. Therefore, there is no body. You can't have a conviction without a body. But this is where the story gets crazy. So Dr. Parkman disappears. We know he was probably visiting John Webster. There's a custodian at Harvard, and he's basically notices that Dr. Webster has kind of been kind to him recently. He's kind of overhearing bits of conversation. He knows that Dr. Parkman goes missing. And he actually, when he was in the chemistry lab cleaning, he saw in the autoclave that in the chemistry lab that there were bone fragments and a section of a jawbone. This is in fact, the jawbone that was found. This is now on museum today, so it's still a big part of history. But this jawbone now tells us something. Even though there is no actual body that we can identify, there's a jawbone, which tells us that potentially something did happen to Dr. Parkman. Now the question is, can they actually identify this to being the jawbone of Dr. Parkman? That is the question. That is going to be the drama of the case. So as the case unfolds, we consider this is a very landmark case of the time. Basically, up until this point, if someone goes missing, you cannot convict someone of a murder because the person is missing, not murdered. We need to have a body, corpus delicti. So because Parkman's body is never found, his death couldn't be proven to absolute certainty. However, we actually do have the the jawbone. So basically what happened is that this landmark case goes up to the judge who at this time presiding over does determine that even though the corpus delicti was never found and the death couldn't be proven with absolute certainty, the prosecution had to establish that Dr. Parkman had been murdered using the circumstantial evidence in this case was the jawbone to prove that the jawbone came from his body, and therefore Webster must have had to be responsible. So how are you going to prove that? So I'm going to give you a minute to think about it. How would you prove that this jawbone came from Dr. Parkman? If you can tell in here, I know this is hard to see, really cool fact is the teeth really are able to withstand burning a lot to a greater temperature than a lot of other bones. So some of the bones would have been really more destroyed. The teeth remained. And if you can see in here, these were actually dentures. So at the time, dentistry, and if you think about odontology, which is the study of teeth, this is really important for this case because now, who do they have to call? Well, they have to call on basically the star witness of the time. And the star witness in this case is actually going to be Dr. Nathan Cooley-Keep. We call him the star witness. So you can picture the trial. This is not necessarily the trial of the century as an OJ case, but we can picture it like Dr. Cooley here. So we have Dr. Nathan Cooley-Keep is a star witness for the prosecution because he is the dentist. So he was Dr. Parkman's dentist since 1825, and he is able to say that I had inspected the teeth. These artificial teeth were found. I returned to Boston. I look at my records, and he said he's satisfied that the right upper teeth that were put into his hands they had to be Dr. Parkman's. There's no mistake. So using his scientific evidence, he was able to be put on the witness stand as an expert witness. So if you remember back to history of forensic science, I talked a little bit about the fact that once a forensic scientist does do their work behind the scenes, they can be called into court to testify. So at this point, we have a testifying doctor who is serving as a forensic scientist on the witness stand. This is circumstantial evidence because it doesn't necessarily give us the body, but this is a part of the body, which is a huge part of this. If this truly is the jawbone of Dr. Parkman, well, then we can say pretty much beyond reasonable doubt that this must be his body. So the Webster trial of 1850, so by this time, the jury was allowed to hear the expert testimony about the false teeth that were recovered from Webster's furnace. They were a match for Dr. Parkman, and more importantly, Judge Shaw basically changed the jury instructions to require conviction. Now, remember, before 1849, it would have been that you had to be proof to an absolute certainty in order to convict someone of a crime. Now he changed the law to say proof beyond reasonable doubt. So if you ever serve on a trial, if you ever serve on a jury, you will be asked to come to a verdict where there's proof beyond reasonable doubt that this, say, person who's accused for the crime actually did do the crime. And this is now the new standard for every future criminal case in this country till today. So using this proof beyond reasonable doubt, even though there was no body that was found, and this is the first trial in America where there was no body, there was a part of a body which could be identified to Dr. Parkman, which was enough to prosecute John Webster for the murder of Dr. Parkman. So on January 26, 1850, Webster was indicted for murder. At this time, of course, this was a big publicized trial. A lot of people were going to see it because this was big news. This was really, really huge at the time. So this is a really important landmark case, I really think, to understand, to set the stage that now you can actually convict without the murder, without the victim. So just to get us into some what we'll be learning in this course with forensic science, just to recap, there's types of physical evidence. Physical evidence can be either possessing class or individual characteristics. Class evidence can link you to a certain class. For example, if the dentist who was analyzing those teeth said that the teeth could have belonged to 1 out of 100 people, that would have been a class characteristic. Individual is really narrowing it down so it must belong to that subject. For example, DNA evidence, fingerprints, something that's linking down to that individual level. So it's very, very difficult, but the more evidence you have, hopefully is going to put together the story and corroborate the story. What are some of the types of physical evidence you will learn in forensic science? These are some of the major ones. And there's units for all of these. We can go dive really deep into all of these. Every type of evidence can be further analyzed, further classified, put together to help to create the story to hopefully bring justice and serve justice in these cases. So in summary, the Dr. Parkman murders, this is the law that changed from having proof of absolute certainty of a crime by having identification to the victim, and now stating that the jury's responsibility is to convict someone beyond reasonable doubt, meaning the circumstantial evidence can be used in the event there is no body or corpus delicti. This is a huge move in society because you have to imagine there are many cases today where baby victims are unidentified or they're potentially never found. What if the body is missing because it's been destroyed? What evidence could we use to link some subject to a crime? This is going to be very important today when we think about cases of serial killers where potentially there's many bodies and maybe over many years where you don't find those bodies, but the person is missing and there's potentially enough evidence to prove there was a homicide and to link those suspects to the crimes. So in summary, this is to hopefully bring further justice to these victims. Going back into time, we can pretty much with close to, I don't know if we can do, absolute certainty, but definitely beyond reasonable doubt, could say that John Webster was in fact guilty of this crime. So in this case, we could say that justice was served, which is nice to finally put an end to us and hopefully catch the criminal. It doesn't happen all the time, but this is a very good case to put together to say what happens in the event that there is no body. Can you actually use this and convict? So landmark cases are ones where any time a law has been changed and now those laws are going to be a part of these cases going forward into society today. So there's many different landmark cases we will be talking about, but this is the one, the Webster case of 1850, that I like to start off with Unit 1. So I hope that was helpful and I'll see you next time. Thank you.